Hi, hello students. Today we're moving on with lesson 10. This is writing and expanding multiplication problems. So today we're going to focus it on multiplication expressions. Multiplication expression, I said problem, I apologize. All right, so let's go over example 1. It says write each expression using the fewest number and symbols and characters. So we're going to break this down so we only have kind of the essentials. We don't need a whole lot. It says use math terms to describe the expressions and the parts of the expression. So let's go ahead and take a moment and let's go ahead and just kind of first write all of these in the fewest symbols as possible. So if we write multiplication, well, 6 and b really can't get rid of 6, and we can't get rid of b, but we can get rid of this x here. So what this is just simply saying is 6b, or 6 times b. Next, if we look at b, it says 4 times 3 times h. Well, I can actually do this multiplication, right? I can go 4 times 3, which is 12, and just like the b, I can bring the h right down next to it. And even down here, even when I have 2 times 2 times 2 times a times b, so I have multiple variables, I can go ahead and kind of group these together. That would be an 8. And then once again, I have a and I have b. All right, so that's kind of breaking it down. We don't need the x's when in multiplication, especially when we have variables involved. We actually want to get rid of the x's. All right, so next, if I kind of look, next it says use math terms to describe the expressions and the parts of the expressions. So let's go ahead and kind of do this together on the first one especially. So here we have 6. The first number we have is 6. So what is this? Well, first of all, this is a factor. Remember, a factor is just simply um, two things two things that are being multiplied together. And this is a coefficient. Hopefully, remember, this is kind of a more, I guess, recent word that we have learned. A coefficient is just simply a number that is being multiplied by a variable. So this, remember, tells us that we have 6 b's. So that's what we call it, a coefficient. And so next we have b. I just gave part of it away. B, just like 6, is a factor. And what I use is called a variable. Remember, a variable is just simply a number, is a letter or symbol we just simply don't know. And B is a symbol, as B is a letter we just don't know. Next, we have the combination of 6 and b. Well, the combination of 6 and b, this is called a product. We have factor and factor. They create a product. Even though we haven't really done any multiplication, they're simply still sitting next to each other. This is the answer. 6 times b is just simply 6b. So it's called a product. Remember, the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. But we also call this a term. A term is just simply everything is being multiplied together. Terms really get separated by subtraction and addition symbols. So that's a term. So we take this information, we kind of continue down here. We have the same basic thing. We need to talk about 12, we need to talk about h, and we want to keep that the same, and we need to talk about 12h. All right, well, just like on 6, first we have 12 as a factor. Almost doing some cutting and pasting here, and it's a coefficient. Once again, it's a coefficient because it's a number that is being multiplied by a variable, which makes h is still a factor, just like b above was a factor, and also it's a variable, just like b above was a variable. And down here, the K12, or 12h, excuse me, is a product. And a term. So once again, it's a product because this is the answer to this up here. 4 times 3 times h is 12h. And it's a term because it's just simply a multiplication problem. Would all be combined together if we know what h is. And we go down to the last one. Now we have 8, a, and b. So now we have kind of one more. We have 8 to worry about. Let's go to the top. We have a to worry about. And we have b to worry about. Plus we have the combination of all three to worry about. So if we kind of just take the information up here, really, what we're doing is I'll even kind of do it here. We're going to go ahead and copy, and we're going to paste it down here. There you go. And the next one, so remember 8 is a factor and a coefficient. It's a coefficient because it's a number that's in front of a variable or variables. Next, A and B, well, they're both like H here. So once again, let's go ahead and cut. So I'm just kind of doing this to show you that I'm not really doing anything new. It's the same thing over and over again, and that's one thing that math is. Both of these are just simply variables and factors. They shouldn't be capitalized. They should say lowercase. And the last part, of course, right here, this is the answer to this problem. 2 times 2 times 2 times A times B is 8AB. So that's called a product and a term. So I'm just kind of doing this copying and pasting right here. If you need to pause the video and get this down, perfectly fine. Just to show you that I'm not really changing anything. It's just the same thing over and over again. That's what math is a lot of. All right, let's go to kind of the last two of this section. Well, now we have 5 times m times 3. Well, just because these numbers aren't together, that wasn't a very good job, but just because 5 and 3 are not together doesn't mean they can't be combined to create 15. Okay, remember, that's called the commutative property of addition, multiplication. It doesn't matter how we multiply. Then m and p come down here. We usually write these in alphabetical order just to kind of make it clean. So you might want to get in the habit of doing that just so you can see it the way the answer is. Next, we have 1 times g times g. Well, 1 can't be combined by anything, but we, of course, get rid of the x's. And if we remember, this is called the identity property of multiplication. Anything times 1 is the anything. So GW really can be written by itself. And whenever this is written by itself, a variable is written by itself, it has a 1 in front of it. If it didn't have a 1 in front of it, it wouldn't exist. If you have one pencil, you have a pencil sitting there. If you didn't have a pencil, it wouldn't be there. So if a G or a W is sitting there, that means there has to be a 1 coefficient in front of it. So now let's go ahead and kind of do the same things we did before. Let's go ahead and talk about this, and we'll kind of type it out again. 15, once again, is a factor and a coefficient. M, just like before, is a factor. Let's get my cursor out of the way. And a variable. And of course, P is the same thing, is a factor and a variable. So go ahead and copy that down. And the last part, of course, is all of it together. Once again, is a product and a term. All right, so there we go. All right, and kind of moving on, that's my little warning. Next one, kind of the same thing. Even if it looks like this, the W plus G, there's still a 1 there. 1 is still a factor and a coefficient. So whenever you see something that's just sitting there by itself and it asks you, what is the coefficient? It is a coefficient of 1. So we have to make sure that we remember that. And just like before, this right here is a factor and a variable. If you need to, go and pause the video. I'm just kind of speeding this along a little bit more. Same thing with W. W is a factor and a variable. And the last part, you can put GW. Let's go ahead and actually put both, or 1 GW. This is the product and the term, just like before. So let's go ahead, I'm just going to do some copying and a quick pasting. I'm just going to put both of them here just to kind of show you that these mean the same thing. There's nothing different about them except there's a 1 here, but technically there is a 1 here. That is the coefficient in front of it. All right, so that's kind of the first part, kind of identifying information and identifying the different parts of an expression. Let's go and stop the video and go and move on to video 2. Hi, hello students. Today we're moving on, or now we're going to move on to example 2. To expand multiplication expression, we will rewrite the expression by including the dot. Remember, this dot is a symbol for multiplication. And see, it's a raised dot. It's not a decimal point. So we have to make sure it's raised dot. Back into the expression. So we're going to kind of take what we did kind of before and kind of work our way backwards. So if we take a look at kind of what's going on here, if we look at this, it simply says 5G. Well, this one, you can't really break down 5. 5 really is just kind of, that's what it is. It can't be broken down. We don't really want ones in here unless there are no other numbers. We don't simply want 1 times 5 because we could do that forever. So when we're doing this, we only want a 1 there if there is no other number. So of course, what we're doing here is we're just simply breaking this out. So this simply says 1 or 5, excuse me, times g. So remember, this is like a product. This is the answer, and this is kind of breaking down of the two factors. All right. So that's about it. That's expanded form, really, with multiplication. So we go down and move on to the next one. Well, same thing. 7 really can't be broken down. I can't break up 7 without using 1. So we have 7. Oops, that was a crazy 7 times a times. Notice I'm putting a dot between them and not an x times c. So there you go. There's kind of breaking it up of it. Now, if you need to, especially on the computer, you might have to use an X in between. That's one thing bad about using the computer. But for written form, we need to make sure we're using this dot here. And next, as you kind of move on to 12, well, can 12 be broken up? Can I multiply 12 by something? And the answer is yes. 12 can be broken up to 3 times 4. And of course, times g. So here we go. We're actually starting expanding out the number. Well, could I break up any of these numbers? Well, 3 can't because it's just simply 3 times, because it's 3 times 1. Remember, we want to use 1. So now I can break up 4, though, to 2 times 2. So notice 4 is being broken up to 2 2's. And then, of course, times g. So this one, we actually could do some breaking up of the number. We can break it up into a few different things here. So this would be our expanded form right here. And we kind of move on to the next one, kind of the same thing. 3 can't be broken up, so 3 kind of gets left alone. But 8 can be broken up. 8 can be broken up to 2 times 4. And notice how I kind of move the numbers to the front. This is all multiplication, so the numbers can be moved kind of together. And then times h. And if I look at this, I can break up 4 again. So 3 times 2 times 2, because 4 can be broken up into 2 2's, times h. So h got broken up here. Actually, I should write this out kind of like a tree, and then broken up again. So this would be kind of the completely expanded form. And if I kind of move on to the next one, well, remember, 7 can't be broken up. 7 is what we know as prime. Actually, I'm going to kind of rewrite this one over here. 7 times g. And then 9 can be broken up by 3 and 3. So what I did, I kind of just kept them separated. And now I like to rewrite it. Like I said, I always rewrite it, put the numbers in front. You might even want to go numerically, but it really doesn't matter once you get commutative property multiplication. But it's always good to have the variables in the back, g times h. Ooh, almost forgot the dot. All right, and so there you go. There's kind of breaking it up into expanded form. And if you look at all these numbers are known as prime numbers. So when we're breaking this up, we really want to focus in on finding prime numbers. Now that's something that is important. We need to make sure kind of we are looking for these things. Kind of double star that. That's just kind of breaking up or expanding it out kind of as completely as possible. All right, so there's kind of expanded form. I mean, it's kind of just figuring out what times what gives me that answer. It's called finding factors. And now we can kind of go ahead and move on to the last part. The last part says find the product. So now we're taking something that's somewhat expanded and kind of bringing it back together. So if I'm going to find the product of this, so find the answer, once again, this is kind of like we did to begin with. We're going to break it down to the simplest forms. Well, here I can combine the 4 and the 7. Remember, that gives me 28. And I have f and g, so it just simply get written f and g. This is the product. This is the answer to it. Now, people say, well, I have f and g there. Why can't I combine them? Well, you can't combine letters because we don't know how to multiply letters together. That's why they're called a variable. They represent a letter that we just simply don't know. If we look down here, it says multiply 3DE times 9yz. Well, it's saying the same thing as this one. Find the product to multiply. Well, just simply kind of do the same thing. We're going to multiply this together. 9 times 3 is 27. And now we're going to put the letters. Like I said, we always like to try to put the letters in alphabetical order. D, E, Y, and Z. And the majority of the time they are kind of given to us in that manner. But if not, we like to put them in that way just to kind of make it easier to read. It says double the product of 6y and 3bc. Well, first we have to find the product of this. So let's go and do step one. This is kind of a two-step problem. Step one is just simply finding the product. So like we did before, 3 times 6 is 18. And notice how y is here, but I want to pull over the b and the c because that's alphabetically in order. And then we have the second part here. It says double it. So if I'm going to double this product, well, what that means is I'm going to simply multiply everything here by 2. Well, if I'm multiplying everything here by 2, I'm just simply multiplying 18 times 2. And 18 times 2 is 36. And B and C just simply come down. So notice it said double the product of. Notice product means I have to find the answer to this first before I can double it. Okay, I don't want to just double 6. I want to double the answer to this. So once again, the product, if I kind of write this out, I guess, into kind of another form. So remember, this would be 2 times the answer, which would be in parentheses, 6y times 3b. Oh, C. And so notice I found the answer to this first, and then I doubled it, or then I multiplied. All right, so there you go. There's our breakdown of the lesson today. So go ahead and stop what you're doing. Go ahead and move on to your assignment.